The bus rolled through the gates of Fort Bragg just after dawn, and Maya Chen pressed her forehead against the cool window glass. Her stomach churned with a mix of excitement and dread. At 19, she looked even younger than her age, standing barely 5'3" in her worn sneakers. The other recruits on the bus were buzzing with nervous energy, some cracking jokes to hide their fear, others sitting in tense silence. Maya stayed quiet, her fingers unconsciously tracing the hidden tattoo on her left shoulder beneath her thin jacket. She'd left Detroit 2 days ago with nothing but a backpack and a promise to herself. The neighborhood she grew up in had a way of swallowing people whole. Her older brother had come back from his deployment a different person, haunted by things he wouldn't talk about. He'd tried to warn her away from enlisting, but Maya saw it differently. She needed to understand. She needed to know what had changed him. What had taken her father from her before she was old enough to remember his face? The bus lurched to a stop, and a drill sergeant built like a tank boarded with a clipboard. His voice could probably shatter glass. "Welcome to hell, ladies and gentlemen. When I call your name, you grab your pathetic belongings and get off my bus." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her backpack. This was it. No turning back now. The formation ground was massive, and the morning sun was already beating down hard. 73 recruits stood in awkward lines, some at attention, others fidgeting nervously. Maya found herself in the back row, which suited her just fine. She'd learned early in life that being invisible was sometimes the best survival strategy. Sergeant Davis paced in front of them like a predator sizing up prey. He was African American, probably in his 40s, with the kind of presence that made you stand straighter without him saying a word. His eyes swept over the group, pausing here and there, calculating who would make it and who would wash out. "Some of you think you're here to become heroes," he barked. "Let me tell you something. Heroes are made in moments you can't prepare for. Right now, you're nothing, less than nothing. My job is to figure out if there's anything worth building underneath all that civilian softness." Maya kept her eyes forward, but she could feel the stares. She always felt them. At her size, people made assumptions. Too small, too weak, too female. She'd heard it all before. "First exercise," Sergeant Davis shouted. 3-mile run. "You fall behind, you'll wish you'd never gotten off that bus. Move out!" The group took off in a chaotic mass, and Maya found herself immediately struggling to keep pace. Her legs pumped hard, but the recruits with longer strides pulled ahead effortlessly. A tall guy next to her glanced down as he passed, and she caught the smirk on his face. Yeah, she knew that look too. By mile 2, her lungs were on fire. The pack had spread out significantly, and Maya found herself in the back quarter of the group. Sergeant Davis drove alongside them in a jeep, his voice booming through a megaphone. "Martinez, my grandmother moves faster than you, and she's been dead for 6 years. Laughter rippled through the runners near her. Maya's face burned, but she kept moving. 1 foot in front of the other. That's all she could do. Just keep moving. The last half-mile was pure agony. Her vision blurred at the edges, and her legs felt like rubber. When she finally crossed the finish line, she was second to last. Only one other recruit, a heavy-set guy who looked like he might pass out, finished after her. Everyone else was already catching their breath, some lying on the ground, others bent over with hands on their knees. Maya stood at attention, sweat pouring down her face, her chest heaving. She wouldn't let them see her collapse. She wouldn't give them that. Well. Sergeant Davis walked over to her, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Looks like we've got a straggler. Tell me, Chen, what made you think you could cut it here?" Maya met his eyes. "I'm here to serve, sir." "Serve?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can barely serve yourself across a finish line. Drop and give me 50 push-ups now." She dropped without hesitation. The first 20 push-ups weren't too bad. Her arms shook, but she pushed through. By 30, her muscles were screaming. At 40, her form started to break down. She could hear whispers around her. "She's not gonna make it. Why do they even let people like that try out?" Dead weight. Maya gritted her teeth and forced out the last 10 push-ups. Her arms gave out on the final one, and she collapsed face first into the dirt. The laughter was louder this time. "On your feet, Chen," Sergeant Davis barked. She scrambled up, dirt clinging to her sweaty face and uniform. The rest of the day was a blur of humiliation. During the obstacle course, she couldn't pull herself over the 8-foot wall on her first 3 attempts. She finally made it on the 4th try, muscles trembling, while others had already finished the entire course. During hand-to-hand combat drills, she got paired with a guy who outweighed her by at least 80 pounds. He was clearly going easy on her, which somehow felt worse than if he'd actually tried. Lunch was a tense affair in the mess hall. Maya sat alone at the end of a long table, mechanically eating her food. She could feel the stares, hear the whispers. A group of recruits at the next table weren't even trying to be quiet. How'd someone like that even pass the entrance requirements? One asked. Maybe they're desperate for numbers, another laughed. Give her a week. She'll be gone. Maya kept her eyes on her tray. She'd learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. Her brother had taught her that. Keep your head down, do your work, prove them wrong quietly. Making a scene never helped anyone. The afternoon brought more challenges. Equipment drills where she struggled with the weight of her pack. Rifle training, where her smaller frame made controlling the recoil harder. Every exercise seemed designed to highlight exactly what she lacked compared to the others. By the time they were dismissed to the barracks, Maya was exhausted in ways she didn't know were possible. The women's barracks was a long room with rows of bunk beds. Her assigned bunk was in the middle of the room, bottom bed. As she sat down to unlace her boots, the conversations around her stopped for a moment, then resumed in lower tones. Her bunkmate, an athletic woman named Torres from California, climbed up to the top bunk without acknowledging her. The message was clear. You're on your own here. That night, as the lights went out and the barracks settled into an uneasy quiet punctuated by coughs and shifting bodies, Maya lay on her back staring at the bottom of Torres's mattress above her. Her whole body ached. Her pride hurt worse. She reached up and touched her left shoulder where the tattoo was hidden beneath her standard-issue t-shirt. The compass rose with coordinates underneath. Her father's last known location. The place where he'd made his final stand, before she was old enough to even remember his face. Her mother had spiraled after losing him, and Maya had bounced through the system, never quite finding solid ground. The tattoo was her anchor. Her reminder of why she was here, not to prove anything to these people who laughed at her. Not to show Sergeant Davis she could keep up. She was here because somewhere in her blood was the same courage that had driven her father forward into danger, the same strength that had made him a soldier worth remembering. She just had to find it. She had to dig deep enough to uncover whatever piece of him lived inside her. A tear slid down her temple, disappearing into her hair. Tomorrow would come early. Tomorrow would bring more pain, more laughter, more doubt. But tomorrow she would get up and try again, because quitting wasn't an option. Not when she'd come this far. Not when she carried these coordinates on her skin like a map to understanding who she was meant to be. Maya closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her under, her fingers still resting on her shoulder, on the hidden promise she'd made to a man she never knew but had always loved. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Maya's body had started adapting to the brutal schedule, waking up at 4:30 in the morning, but her standing in the unit hadn't improved. If anything, it had gotten worse. She'd become the example, the cautionary tale that Sergeant Davis used when he wanted to motivate the others. If Chen can do it, you certainly can, he'd shout during PT. The implication was clear. She was the lowest bar, the absolute minimum standard. The morning runs were still her biggest struggle. While she'd improved her time by almost 2 minutes, she was still consistently in the bottom 5 finishers. Every single time. The other recruits had stopped waiting for her to quit. Now they just worked around her, like she was a permanent fixture they'd learned to ignore. Torres, her bunkmate, had warmed up slightly, at least enough to occasionally grunt a greeting. But real friendships were forming around Maya, connections she wasn't part of. She'd watch the other women in the barracks laughing together during the precious few minutes of downtime, swapping stories about their lives before, making plans for what they'd do after graduation. Maya stayed on her bunk writing letters to her brother that she'd never send. The obstacle course remained her nemesis. That 8-foot wall might as well have been Mount Everest. While other recruits had progressed to completing the course in under 5 minutes, Maya still struggled to finish it all. Her arms simply didn't have the strength to pull her body weight up and over consistently. On this particular Thursday morning, the entire uni was running the course for evaluation. Sergeant Davis stood at the finish line with his clipboard, timing each recruit. Maya watched as person after person cleared the wall on their first attempt, muscles flexing, bodies moving with increasing confidence. When her turn came, she approached the wall with her stomach in knots. She'd practiced this 100 times. Jump, grip, pull, swing leg over. Simple mechanics. But simple didn't mean easy. Her first attempt ended with her sliding back down, her fingers losing their grip on the top edge. Second attempt, same result. She could feel Sergeant Davis's eyes boring into her back, the line of recruits behind her shifting impatiently. "Chen, stop wasting everyone's time," Davis barked. "If you can't do it in 3 attempts, move on to the next obstacle." But Maya couldn't move on. Something in her refused. She backed up, got a running start, launched herself at the wall with everything she had. Her fingers caught the edge, her feet scrambled for purchase, and for one glorious second, she thought she had it. Then her grip failed. She fell backwards, landing hard on her back. The wind knocked completely out of her lungs. The world spun for a moment, and she gasped like a fish out of water, her diaphragm frozen in panic. "Get up, Chen. You're holding up the line." She rolled to her side, finally managing to suck in a breath. Humiliation burned hotter than the pain radiating through her spine. As she stumbled to her feet and moved to the next obstacle with tears stinging her eyes, she heard the voice behind her. "Dead weight." It was said just loud enough for her to hear, just quiet enough that Sergeant Davis might have missed it. The breaking point came 2 days later during a team navigation exercise. The unit had been divided into squads of 6, each given a map, a compass, and a set of coordinates. They had 4 hours to navigate through the forest terrain, locate 3 checkpoints, and return to base. It was a test of teamwork, leadership, and tactical thinking. Maya's squad leader was a guy named Brandon Cooper. He was everything Maya wasn't: tall, confident, naturally athletic, and loved by both the instructors and his fellow recruits. He was also the one who'd called her dead weight, though she'd never confirmed it for certain. The squad gathered around as Brandon laid out the map. "All right, we've got 3 checkpoints. We'll take the direct route to the first one, then cut east through the valley to the second, then loop back for the third. Straight lines, fastest path. We finish first, we get weekend passes." Maya studied the map over his shoulder. She'd spent countless nights studying her father's old military manuals, learning map reading and terrain analysis. Something about Brandon's route didn't sit right. "The valley's going to be muddy," she said quietly. "We got rain 2 days ago. We'd move faster if we took the ridgeline to the east. It's longer on the map, but we'll make better time on solid ground." Brandon looked at her like she'd suggested they navigate by following butterflies. "Did I ask for your opinion, Chen?" "I'm just saying if we hit mud in that valley." "I said, did I ask?" Brandon's voice had an edge now. The other 4 squad members watched the exchange with uncomfortable expressions. "Look, I know you're trying to contribute or whatever, but stick to what you know, which apparently isn't much. We're taking my route." Maya's face burned. She wanted to push back to explain why she was right, but the looks from the others told her everything. "Don't make waves. Don't slow us down more than you already will." "Yes, squad leader," she said, the words tasting like ash. They set out with Brandon in the lead, moving at a brisk pace through the forest. Maya kept up better than usual, adrenaline and frustration fueling her legs. The first checkpoint was easy, located right where Brandon expected. Then they descended into the valley. The ground grew softer with each step. Within 10 minutes, they were ankle-deep in mud that sucked at their boots with every step. What should have been a 30-minute trek turned into an exhausting slog. One recruit, a smaller guy named Phillips, lost his boot entirely, sucked right off his foot. They had to stop and dig it out, wasting precious minutes. Brandon's confidence began to crack. "It wasn't supposed to be this bad," he muttered, checking the map for the 100th time. Maya bit her tongue. "I told you so wouldn't help anyone right now." By the time they reached the second checkpoint, they were 40 minutes behind schedule and covered in mud up to their knees. The squad's mood had soured completely. They were going to fail this exercise, which meant extra PT, no weekend passes, and another black mark on their record. "Maybe we should cut directly to checkpoint 3, Maya suggested carefully. "If we go back through the valley, I've got this," Brandon snapped. His face was red, whether from exertion or embarrassment, Maya couldn't tell. "Everyone just follow me and keep up." But his navigation had gotten rattled. He led them in a circle, wasting another 20 minutes before admitting he'd misread the map. By the time they finally stumbled back to base, Last place by almost an hour. The entire squad was furious. Sergeant Davis stood at the finish line, shaking his head. "Cooper, what happened out there?" "The terrain was worse than expected, sir. The mud." "The mud?" Davis cut him off. "Did the mud also affect your ability to read a map? Did the mud make you walk in circles?" "Every other squad adjusted their routes based on conditions. That's called tactical thinking. You failed this exercise and you cost your entire squad their weekend passes." The weight of that announcement settled over them like a lead blanket. 2 days off, gone. Because of Brandon's stubborn leadership and Maya's inability to make herself heard. As they lined up for the punishment PT, an extra hour of drills in the fading daylight, Maya could feel the resentment radiating from her squad mates. This was somehow her fault too. She was the weak link, the one dragging everyone down, even when she'd been right about the route. That evening, while most of the unit was at the mess hall, Maya slipped outside behind the barracks. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She found a quiet spot near a fence and sat down, her back against the rough wood. From her pocket, she pulled out the worn photograph she kept hidden in her footlocker. The edges were soft from years of handling. Her father stood in his dress uniform, chest covered in medals she'd learned to identify over the years. Behind him, barely visible, was a landscape marker with coordinates, the same coordinates tattooed on her shoulder. Her mother had given her this photo before she died back when Maya was 14. "Your daddy was the strongest man I ever knew," she'd said, her voice slurred from whatever she'd taken that day. "Not because he was big, because he never stopped. Remember that, baby. He never stopped." Maya traced her finger over her father's face. Had he felt like this during his training? Had people laughed at him, dismissed his ideas, made him feel like he didn't belong? "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to the photograph. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." The sunset offered no answers. The photograph remained silent. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the doubt and exhaustion and humiliation, something stubborn refused to break. She would get up tomorrow. She would face another day of being the example of what not to be. Because the alternative was going back to Detroit, back to nothing, back to a life where she'd never understand what her father had been made of. And Maya wasn't ready to give up on that question. Not yet. She tucked the photograph back in her pocket and headed to the mess hall, walking into the laughter and conversations that would die down when she entered, ready to eat her dinner alone while planning how she'd survive another day. The announcement came during morning formation, delivered by Sergeant Davis with unusual formality. General Patricia Hawthorne would be conducting a surprise inspection of the training facility. Everyone was to be on their absolute best behavior, uniforms spotless, performance flawless. Maya had heard the name before. General Hawthorne was a legend, a 3-star general who'd served in multiple combat zones and earned more commendations than most soldiers could dream of. She was known for 2 things: her brilliant tactical mind and her zero tolerance for anything less than excellence. The barracks erupted into controlled chaos. Everyone frantically prepared their uniforms, shined their boots until they could see their reflections, practiced their salutes in front of mirrors. Maya did the same, though with less enthusiasm. A general's inspection was just one more opportunity for her to be found lacking. The morning of the inspection dawned hot and humid. The unit assembled on the PT field in perfect formation, 73 recruits standing at rigid attention. Maya was in the back row as usual, where she could blend into the background. A convoy of vehicles rolled up at exactly 0800 hours. The passenger door of the lead vehicle opened, and General Patricia Hawthorne stepped out. Even from a distance, her presence was commanding. She was shorter than Maya expected, maybe 5'7", but she moved with the kind of confidence that made height irrelevant. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture perfect, her gray hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Sergeant Davis and the other drill instructors snapped to attention, their salutes crisp. The general returned them and began her inspection, walking slowly down the ranks. Her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. She paused occasionally to ask a recruit a question, check the alignment of a uniform, test their knowledge of procedures. Maya's heart hammered as the general moved closer to her row. Please just walk past. Please don't notice me. Please. All right, everyone. General Hawthorne's voice carried across the field, clear and authoritative. PT time. Let's see what you're made of. Push-ups on my count. Ready, begin. The entire formation dropped as one. Maya's arms were already shaking by push-up 15. She could see others around her pumping them out with relative ease. 20, 30, 40. Her form was starting to break down, her back sagging slightly. Keep that form, Chen. Sergeant Davis barked from somewhere behind her. She locked her core, pushed through. 50, 60. Her arms were on fire. 70, 80. She could barely complete the full range of motion now, but she refused to quit. Not in front of a general. Not today. 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Maya's arms gave out on the final push-up and she collapsed face first into the grass. Sweat poured off her in rivers. Her arms twitched with exhaustion. Around her, some recruits had finished easily and were already standing. Others were struggling like her, gasping for air. Recover, came the command. Everyone scrambled to their feet, returning to attention. Maya stood swaying slightly, her vision swimming. She blinked hard, forced her body to stillness and locked her eyes forward. That's when she felt it. Someone was watching her. General Hawthorne stood 15 feet away, her gaze fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The general's expression was unreadable, but something in her eyes suggested she was calculating, analyzing, seeing something others missed. The inspection continued. The unit was put through various drills, rifle handling, squad formations, response to commands. Maya performed adequately. Not great, but not terrible. Just another face in the crowd, or so she hoped. Then came the final exercise of the morning. Another run. 3 miles in full gear. This was it. This was where Maya would embarrass herself in front of a 3-star general. There was no avoiding it. She couldn't run fast enough to keep up with the pack, no matter how hard she tried. Her short legs and smaller lung capacity just couldn't compete. The whistle blew and they were off. Maya pushed hard from the start, knowing she'd need every advantage. Her breath came in controlled gasps, her legs pumping with everything she had. The pack pulled ahead and she found herself in her usual position, the back quarter of the runners, 1 mile down. Her lungs burned. 2 miles down. Her legs felt like lead, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't, not today. Not with the general watching. As she rounded the final turn, she could see the finish line ahead. Most of the unit was already there, cooling down, catching their breath. Maya was fourth from last, but she was still running. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel, her entire world reduced to putting one foot in front of the other. She crossed the line and immediately stood at attention, chest heaving, sweat pouring down her face. Her body screamed for her to collapse, to bend over, to give in to the exhaustion. She remained standing, rigid, present. That's when she heard the voice. You there? Martinez's daughter. Wait, what? Maya's blood ran cold. The general was looking directly at her, and she'd just said, front and center, private. Maya's legs moved on autopilot, carrying her forward even as her mind raced in confusion. How did the general know? How could she possibly know? She stopped in front of General Hawthorne and saluted. Private Chen, ma'am. The general studied her for a long moment. Up close, Maya could see the lines around her eyes, the evidence of years spent in harsh conditions. There was something familiar in those eyes, something that made Maya's chest tighten. You run like someone with something to prove, the general said quietly. Just trying to keep up. Ma'am, keeping up isn't the same as giving up. The general's eyes flicked to Maya's shoulder, then back to her face. A breeze had picked up and Maya's PT shirt, damp with sweat, clung to her body. I want to see your left shoulder. Maya's world stopped spinning. No, she couldn't mean. Ma'am? Your shoulder, Private. Show me. With trembling fingers, Maya pulled aside the neck of her PT shirt, exposing the tattoo on her left shoulder. The compass rose design was about 3 inches across, with coordinates printed in careful, precise numbers beneath it. 333152 4436 and 61. The general's expression changed. Her professional mask cracked just for a second, revealing something underneath. Recognition. Pain. Memory. Where did you get those coordinates? The general's voice was quieter now, almost gentle but with an edge that suggested this was the most important question she'd ever asked. Maya's throat was dry. "My father, ma'am. Captain James Chen, he served in Iraq. Those coordinates, that's where he died, where his unit was ambushed in Fallujah, 2004. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. The entire training field had gone quiet. Everyone was watching, though no one understood what was happening. General Hawthorne closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, there was a wetness there that hadn't been before. "Captain Chen, 2nd Platoon." He went back for the civilians. The family trapped in the building. Maya's breath caught. "You knew him?" "I was his commanding officer that day. He saved 4 soldiers and a family of 6 before—" The general's voice trailed off. "You were just a baby. 3 years old, ma'am. I don't remember him. Just stories. Just this photograph and these coordinates." The general looked at Maya with new eyes, seeing not just a struggling recruit but the daughter of a soldier who'd made the ultimate sacrifice under her command. The connection between them crackled with unspoken history, with grief and honor and questions that had waited 21 years to be asked. "Sergeant Davis," the general said, her command voice returning. "I need a word with Private Chen, in private. Continue the inspection without me." "Yes, ma'am." Davis looked bewildered but didn't question orders. The general gestured for Maya to follow her, and they walked across the field toward a small office building. Maya's mind raced. This couldn't be real. The odds of this, of her father's commanding officer being the one to inspect her unit, were astronomical. Unless it wasn't a coincidence at all. They entered a small office, and the general closed the door behind them. The professional facade dropped completely. The woman who turned to face Maya looked tired, older, carrying the weight of every soldier she'd ever lost. "I remember the day your father died like it was yesterday," she began. "We'd been in Fallujah for 3 months. The city was a war zone. Civilians were caught in the crossfire daily. We got a report of a family trapped in a building that was about to be overrun by enemy forces. I was prepared to write them off as casualties of war. Your father wouldn't accept that." Maya stood perfectly still, afraid that if she moved, this moment would shatter. He volunteered to go back with a small team. They extracted 4 wounded soldiers and a family of 6, parents and their children. On their way back, an IED detonated. Your father pushed 2 soldiers out of the blast radius. They survived. He didn't. The general's voice cracked slightly. He was 28 years old. One of the finest soldiers I've ever commanded. Tears streamed down Maya's face now, and she didn't try to stop them. "Everyone here thinks I'm a joke, ma'am. That I don't belong. Maybe they're right. I can't run as fast. I'm not as strong. I fail more than I succeed." "Stop," the general said firmly. "Your father wasn't the biggest soldier in his unit either. He wasn't the fastest runner. But he had something that couldn't be taught. Heart, determination, the absolute refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier." She stepped closer to Maya. "I've been watching you this morning. You know what I saw?" Maya shook her head, not trusting her voice. "I saw a soldier who finished every single exercise, who never quit even when her body wanted to, who stood at attention after that run when she had every reason to collapse. That's not weakness. That's the same strength your father had." The general paused. "Tell me why you enlisted." "The real reason." Maya took a shaky breath. "I needed to understand who he was. What made him the kind of man who'd run toward danger instead of away from it. My mother couldn't handle losing him. My brother came back broken from his deployment. I thought, if I walked the same path, maybe I'd find answers. Maybe I'd find whatever piece of him lives in me." The general nodded slowly, understanding written across her face. "You're looking for him in the wrong place. He's not in these coordinates or on some battlefield. He's in you every time you refuse to quit, every time you get back up after falling. That's his legacy, and you're honoring it every single day you show up to this training." Something in Maya's chest loosened, a knot she'd been carrying for years finally beginning to unravel. The general reached up and slowly rolled back her own left sleeve, revealing a long scar running down her forearm and next to it a small tattoo. A list of names in tiny script. Maya's eyes scanned down until she found it. CPT J. Chen. "I carry every soldier I lost," the general said quietly. "Your father earned his place on this list. And now I'm going to make sure his daughter gets the chance to show everyone what she's really made of." The small office felt even smaller with the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. Maya stood across from General Hawthorne, still processing the fact that her father's commanding officer was here now, looking at her with eyes that had witnessed the day that shaped May. His entire existence. "Sit down, Private," the general said, gesturing to a chair. Her tone had shifted from commanding officer to something gentler, though no less serious. "We have time. I want to hear your story." Maya sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Where did she even begin? "My mother told me I was 3 years old when the officers came to our door." Maya started, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't remember that day. I don't remember my father at all, really. Just fragments that might be memories or might be stories I heard so many times they feel like memories." The general listened without interrupting, her full attention on Maya in a way that felt both intimidating and comforting. "Mom fell apart after he died. She tried to hold it together, but she couldn't. The grief was too big. She started using anything that would make the pain stop. Pills, alcohol, whatever she could get her hands on. By the time I was 7, she couldn't take care of me anymore. The state took me away." Maya's fingers traced the edge of the chair, a nervous habit she'd developed years ago. "I bounced around foster homes for a while. Some were okay, some weren't. My older brother, David, he tried to step in when he turned 18. He'd been living with our uncle, and he wanted to give me a stable home. He'd just enlisted, following in Dad's footsteps." "Your brother served?" the general asked gently. Maya nodded. 2 tours in Afghanistan. He came back different, angry, couldn't sleep. Would fly off the handle at random sounds. I was 13 by then, living with him in a tiny apartment in Detroit. I watched him fight demons I couldn't see. He'd wake up screaming some nights. Other nights I'd find him sitting in the dark, just staring at nothing. The pain of those memories flickered across Maya's face. "He tried to warn me away from enlisting. Said the military breaks people, that it takes more than it gives. But I couldn't let it go. I needed to understand what Dad died for, what turned my brother into someone I barely recognized. I needed to know if I had any of Dad's strength in me, or if I was just going to be another person who broke." General Hawthorne leaned forward slightly. "Your father was one of the bravest men I served with, but bravery isn't about being unbreakable. It's about breaking and still choosing to move forward. Your brother's struggles don't diminish his service or his strength." "I know that now," Maya said. "But back then I just saw someone who'd lost himself in the war. I thought if I could understand, maybe I could help him. Maybe I could find whatever piece of Dad he was looking for and bring it back to him." "Is that why you got the tattoo?" Maya's hand instinctively went to her shoulder. The coordinates were in his personal effects. Mom kept them in a box with his medals and some photos. Before she died when I was 14, she gave me everything. Said I should know who my father was, even if I couldn't remember him. I stared at those coordinates for years, wondering what that place looked like. What happened there? Why that specific spot on Earth took him away from us? She paused, gathering her thoughts. I got the tattoo on my 18th birthday. It felt like making a promise. Like saying, I won't forget. I won't let you be just a name on a wall somewhere. The compass rose is because Dad was my North Star. The person who was supposed to guide me. Except he was gone before I could even learn to read a map. The general's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. Tell me what happened that day. From your perspective. Tell me about the mission. Maya was surprised by the request. I only know what I could piece together from official reports and the stories my uncle told me. He served with Dad early in his career. Tell me what you know. Sometimes the story we tell ourselves matters as much as the truth. Maya took a breath. It was April 2004. The battle for Fallujah was getting worse every day. Your unit was supposed to hold a sector while evacuating friendly forces, but there was a family trapped in a building, parents and their 4 kids. The youngest was just a baby. Enemy forces were closing in and command was ready to abandon the position. Your father refused, the general said quietly. He literally refused a direct order. I should have written him up. Instead, I gave him permission to take a small team. He went in with 3 other soldiers, Maya continued. They found the family in a basement, terrified, thinking they were going to die. Dad and his team got them out, along with 4 wounded soldiers who'd been pinned down in the same area. They were on their way back to the safe zone when the IED went off. Maya's voice cracked. The report said he saw the device trigger, had maybe half a second to react. He pushed 2 soldiers out of the blast radius, threw himself between the explosion and a family with children. The parents and all 4 kids survived. So did both soldiers he pushed clear. Dad took the full force of the blast. The office was silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning. General Hawthorne's professional mask had completely fallen away. She looked like a woman carrying 21 years of survivor's guilt. "I was the one who recommended him for the Medal of Honor," the general said. "He received it posthumously. Your mother was supposed to accept it at a ceremony, but I heard she was unable to attend." "She was in rehab at the time," Maya said without bitterness. "Just fact. My uncle accepted it on our family's behalf. I saw it once when I was 10. He kept it in a display case. I remember thinking it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, but it also meant my dad was never coming home. That medal was all I had of him." The general stood and walked to the window, looking out over the training grounds where recruits continued their drills. "I've replayed that day 1,000 times. If I'd refused his request, if I'd ordered him to stand down, if I'd sent a different team, your father would still be alive. You'd have grown up with him. Your mother might not have spiraled. Your brother might not be fighting his demons." "You can't think like that," Maya said, surprised by her own boldness in correcting a 3-star general. "Dad made his choice. He chose to save those people. That's who he was. You gave him the chance to be that person. If you'd refused, those 10 people would be dead and Dad would have had to live with that. Maybe that would have broken him too." The general turned back to face her, something like respect in her eyes. "You sound like him. He always saw the bigger picture even when it cost him everything." Maya stood up, needing to move. "The hard part is that I don't remember him. I have stories and photos and official reports, but I don't have memories. I don't know what his voice sounded like. I don't know what he smelled like or how he laughed. I'm trying to become like a man I never knew." "How do you do that? How do you honor someone who's just a ghost?" "You stop trying to become him," the general said firmly. "Your father was who he was because of his experiences, his choices, his journey. You're not him. You're his daughter, and you have your own journey. The question isn't, am I like my father? And the question is, am I living in a way that would make him proud? But how do I know what would make him proud?" Maya's frustration bubbled up. "Everyone here thinks I'm a failure. I'm the slowest runner. I struggle with obstacles everyone else finds easy. I'm the example they use for what not to be. How is that honoring his memory?" The general walked over and stood directly in front of Maya, her presence commanding but not unkind. "Listen to me very carefully. Your father wasn't the biggest soldier in his unit. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest in terms of pure physical capability, but he was the bravest, the most determined, and the most stubborn person I've ever commanded." "Do you know why?" Maya shook her head. "Because he failed constantly. He struggled through basic training just like you're struggling now. He was injured 3 times in his career because he'd push himself beyond his limits. Other soldiers would joke about his size, question whether he could pull his weight. And every single time he proved them wrong by showing up, by refusing to quit, by being the first one to volunteer when everyone else was looking for an excuse to say no." Tears streamed freely down Maya's face now. "I'm so tired of being the weak one." "You're not weak. Weakness is giving up. Weakness is letting other people's opinions define who you are. You've survived foster care. You've watched your brother struggle with PTSD. You've carried the weight of a father you never knew for your entire life. You got those coordinates tattooed on your skin and showed up here knowing you'd be at a disadvantage. That's not weakness. That's courage." The general pulled her own sleeve back up, covering the scar and the names. "I'm going to do something for you. Not because you're your father's daughter, but because I see potential everyone else is missing. Tomorrow there's a leadership exercise. You're going to lead a squad through a navigation course. I'm putting you in charge." Maya's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I don't care what you think. I care what you do. Your father taught me that leadership isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about making good decisions under pressure and bringing everyone home. You have skills these other recruits don't. You've been studying terrain and navigation since you were a kid, trying to understand your father's world. Now you're going to use those skills." "They won't follow me," Maya said quietly. "They don't respect me. Then earn their respect. Not by being like them, but by being better than them at the things that actually matter. Show them that the person they've been laughing at has been learning while they've been coasting. Show them what your father showed me 21 years ago, that the size of your heart matters more than the size of your body." Maya stood there, overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the last hour. She had walked into this office as the unit's biggest disappointment. She was walking out as the daughter of a hero, carrying the expectations of a 3-star general who'd witnessed her father's finest and final moment. "I don't know if I can do this," Maya admitted. "Your father said the exact same thing to me before that mission," the general replied. "Then he did it anyway. That's what courage looks like. Not the absence of fear or doubt, but action despite it." The general opened the office door, and they stepped back out into the bright sunlight. The training ground spread out before them, full of recruits who would soon learn that the person they'd dismissed was about to surprise them all. "One more thing," the general said as they walked back toward the formation. "Your father would be proud of you, not because you're succeeding or failing at specific tasks, but because you're here, trying, refusing to quit, honoring his memory by becoming your own version of brave. That's all he'd want. That's all any parent wants." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge, a new chance to prove herself. But for now, for this moment, she felt something she hadn't felt since enlisting. She felt like she belonged here. The morning formation felt different. Maya stood in her usual spot in the back row, but something had shifted. Word had spread through the barracks that the general had singled her out yesterday, though no one knew why. The whispers had started immediately. Was she getting kicked out? Had she done something wrong? The speculation ran wild, and Maya had stayed silent, processing everything the general had told her. Sergeant Davis stood at the front of the formation, clipboard in hand. General Hawthorne stood beside him, her presence commanding the attention of every recruit on the field. "Listen up," Davis barked. "Today's exercise is a leadership and navigation course. You'll be divided into 6 squads. Each squad will have a designated leader who will navigate your team through checkpoints in the forest. The squad with the best time and most accurate navigation wins weekend passes. The squad that fails this exercise will be running extra PT for the next week." The recruits shifted nervously. This was a high-stakes exercise, and everyone wanted those weekend passes. "Squad leaders have been selected based on observed leadership potential," Davis continued. "Cooper, Johnson, Williams, Rodriguez, Patterson, and," he paused, his eyes finding Maya in the back row, "Chen." The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the murmurs, the shocked whispers. Maya felt every eye on the field turn to look at her. Brandon Cooper's face went red. Even Torres, her bunkmate, looked surprised. "Chen, front and center," Davis ordered. Maya's legs moved automatically, carrying her forward through the parted ranks. She stopped in front of the sergeant and saluted. He studied her for a moment, then leaned in slightly. "Don't make me regret this," he said quietly. "General's orders or not, you're representing this unit." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The squads were announced. Maya's team consisted of 5 other recruits: Torres, Phillips, 2 guys named Anderson and Kowalski, and, her stomach dropped, Brandon Cooper. Of course, the universe had a sense of humor. Brandon walked over to join the group, his jaw tight. He wouldn't even look at Maya. They were given their equipment: a map, a compass, a list of 6 coordinates to locate, and 4 hours to complete the course. The terrain was challenging: dense forest, varying elevations, water crossings, the works. "All right, team," Maya said, spreading the map on the ground. Her voice sounded small to her own ears, but she pushed forward. "We have 6 checkpoints to hit. We need to plan our route carefully." "This is ridiculous," Brandon muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "No offense, Chen, but you can barely finish a run. How are you supposed to lead us?" Maya looked up at him, remembering the general's words: "Earn their respect." "Because I've spent the last month studying these maps while everyone else was celebrating making it through the day. Because I know this terrain. And because, like it or not, I'm your squad leader. So we can either work together, or we can fail together. Your choice." Torres raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm listening. What's your plan?" Maya turned back to the map, her confidence growing slightly. She'd been preparing for this her whole life without knowing it. All those nights studying her father's military manuals, learning terrain analysis, understanding how weather and ground conditions affected movement. It was all relevant now. Most teams will take the obvious routes, Maya explained, tracing her finger along the map. Direct lines between checkpoints. But look here. This valley has a stream running through it. After yesterday's rain, it'll be swollen. Anyone trying to cross it will lose time. If we take the ridgeline to the east, it's longer on the map, but we'll move twice as fast on dry ground. That's the route I suggested last week, Brandon said accusingly. Yes, it was. Maya met his eyes. You were right about the approach. The execution needed adjustment, that's all. Something in Brandon's expression shifted slightly. Not quite respect, but maybe the beginning of it. Maya outlined the full route, explaining her reasoning for each decision. She showed them the topographical features that would help them move efficiently, the natural landmarks they could use to verify their position. Phillips and Anderson started asking questions, engaged now. Even Kowalski, who'd barely spoken to her before, was nodding along. The whistle blew. 6 squads scattered into the forest. Maya's team moved quickly but carefully. She checked the compass, constantly, verified their position against terrain features, and kept everyone informed about what she was seeing. Unlike Brandon's forceful leadership style, Maya explained her decisions and listened when team members had concerns. At the first checkpoint, they were second to arrive. Not bad. The next checkpoint is due north. 3 clicks, Anderson said, looking at the map. Not directly, Maya corrected gently. If we go straight north, we hit that ravine. It's not marked clearly on the map, but see these contour lines? That's a steep drop. We need to angle northwest, follow the tree line, then cut back east. Adds maybe 10 minutes, but saves us from having to climb down and back up a ravine. How do you even see that? Torres asked, genuinely curious. My father's old training manuals, Maya said simply. I've been reading them since I was 12. They adjusted their route. 20 minutes later, they came across another squad, Johnson's team, trying to navigate down a steep ravine. Johnson looked up, frustrated and muddy, as Maya's squad passed along the ridge above them. Taking the scenic route, Johnson, Kowalski called down with a grin. At checkpoint 3, they were in first place. The team's energy had completely shifted. They were working together now, trusting Maya's navigation, moving with purpose and confidence. Then they hit the water crossing. The stream was swollen from recent rain, moving fast over slippery rocks. It was maybe 15 feet across, but the current was strong enough to knock someone over if they weren't careful. We need to cross here, Maya said, studying the water. The next safe crossing point is 2 clicks south, and we'd lose our lead. That current's pretty strong, Philip said nervously. He was the smallest guy on the team besides Maya. We'll cross together. Form a chain, strongest person upstream to break the current. Everyone holds on to the person next to them. If someone slips, the chain catches them. Brandon stepped forward without being asked. I'll take point upstream. Maya nodded. Torres, you're next. Then Anderson, Phillips, Kowalski, and I'll bring up the rear. Phillips, you're in the middle where the current's already broken. Everyone, clear. They formed the chain, Brandon wading into the water first. The current hit him hard, but his size and strength held firm. One by one they followed, hands locked on each other's arms. The water was freezing and moved fast, pulling at their legs. Halfway across, Philip's foot slipped on a rock. He went down with a yelp, but Kowalski's grip held firm. Got you, got you. The chain held. They steadied, adjusted, and continued forward. 30 seconds later, they all stood on the far bank, soaked but safe. Good call, Chen, Brandon said, catching his breath. That chain saved Phillips. That's what teams do, Maya replied. We catch each other. The last 3 checkpoints went smoothly. Maya's navigation was flawless, her route choices smart and efficient. The team moved like a well-oiled machine now, each person contributing, all of them trusting their unlikely leader. They crossed the finish line in first place by almost 15 minutes. Sergeant Davis looked at his stopwatch, then at Maya, then back at the stopwatch like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. General Hawthorne stood beside him, her expression carefully neutral, but Maya could see the slight smile tugging at the corner of her mouth.